Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
For months now, the government has been under pressure to say what sort of Brexit deal it would be willing to make. Well, today, for the first time, David Davis, the minister in charge of leaving the EU, has said the government would consider some form of continued payments in order to have access to the single market. Our political editor, Laura Koonsberg, is at Westminster for us now. Laura, just how significant is this?
Well, George, this wasn't a gaffe. This wasn't an oops. This is the genuinely held view of the man who is in charge of the Brexit department, the man who right now is poring over how it might work, what the world might look like after we leave the EU. So it does matter, not least because the government's been so tight-lipped about their approach. And this is a big clue about what they're trying to achieve.
Every week, we send £350 million to Brussels.
What did the country vote for? More power for our government, but for many, the promise of cash that's spent by the EU being spent by us. But for the first time, a senior minister has confirmed, even after we've left the Union, we might still pay in.
Will the government consider making any contribution in any shape or form for access to the single market?
The major criterion here is that we get the best possible access for goods and services to the European market. And if that is included in what he's talking about, then of course we would consider it.
Remember, ministers aren't meant to be giving anything away. But he's not the only one staring into the vacuum. He was backed by the Chancellor this afternoon. Our membership right now costs £11 billion a year, but after Brexit we might pay for the single market, to trade freely around the continent, or to remain part of research and science projects, for example. And there'll be exit costs too, like the pensions of EU staff. Brexit! But that wasn't quite what many voters bargained for, and some MPs who campaigned to leave would fight it tooth and claw.
People would be absolutely outraged if we came out of the EU and then carried on paying them 15 billion a year, 10 billion a year, or whatever the figure is. No, I don't think that's going to happen. But I mean, obviously, in that very, very hypothetical case, of course, people will be exceptionally upset about it. It's just not going to happen.
But should we keep paying something to the EU if it means we'd prosper? Labour isn't yet sure.
We were promised no running commentary, so we've got that. That's the first broken promise. The idea of paying for access, I'm not really sure what that means.
Too quick.
The government never gave up on photo opportunities, but had intended to keep quiet on plans for Brexit. But piece by piece, ministers are starting to reveal what they might do.
Now, many voters who chose to put their cross in the box to leave the European Union might well think, well, hang on, that's not what I voted for. I wanted the money back. But it's clear, although they'll face pressure from the public and inside their own party, government ministers do not feel completely bound by the promises that were made in the campaign. In so many ways, George, the referendum in June feels a long time ago.
Laura, thank you very much.
Well, a little light has been shed today on the government's have cake and eat it approach to Brexit negotiations. But it looks like we may have to pay for it first. The Brexit Secretary David Davis suggested to MPs today that ministers might be prepared to continue contributions to the EU to maintain access to the single market. Our political editor Gary Gibbon is in Westminster. Gary.
Well, one thing you'll probably remember from the referendum campaign, if anything, is that we're net contributors to the EU. We pay a sort of subscription, that disputed figure of 350 million a week on the side of the Leave bus. What you didn't hear during the referendum was the idea that we might carry on paying even if we come out, and potentially quite a chunky amount. But that's what, behind the scenes, David Davis, the Secretary of State for exiting the EU, has been saying to business people who've been in to visit him. His rationale is that that might be the only way in which we secure the sort of single market access that we get for a lot of our exporters at the moment inside Europe. He's been saying that to them privately. Today, when he was asked by a Labour MP in the House, he was a bit more open in public. And this is what he said when he was asked, could we carry on paying in even when we've come out?
Will the government consider making any contribution in any shape or form for access to the single market?
The major criterion here is that we get the best possible access for goods and services to the European market. And if that is included in what he's talking about, then of course we would consider it.
Interestingly, the Chancellor, Philip Hammond, piled in. He was actually on a visit in Scotland and agreed with David Davis when he was speaking to journalists, almost like he was trying to bag this, cement in this idea. And it has been discussed, as I say, in private with business people, along with another idea, which is the idea that those sectors of the British economy bringing in low-skilled migrants, areas like agriculture and food processing, who are worried about labour shortages, he has been saying, David Davis, in private to business people, that he'll make sure they don't have anything to worry about. So there you are. Contributions could continue. Low-skilled migration could continue. Some Leave campaigners are a bit relaxed about that. Some are absolutely furious. If, big if, Theresa May wants to go down this route, she's going to have to face down some people that until now she's looked like she was swimming pretty close to.
Gary Gibbon.
I've been getting